you're
Look, we
an
try to...
influencer. You are also the head of delivery implementations
Sorry?
at Five
Okay.
Degrees.
We try to get
On
the
top of that, if that wasn't
Let-
already
let
enough,
me-
you're a lecturer and a speaker on open banking. So I think it's safe to say that you're an expert in this space.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, Stephanie, and welcome everyone. Thank you for everyone that actually resisted to stay here until this hour. It's a pleasure to be here among so many professionals. As you said, a little quickly think about me. So I've been around a little bit, always working around technology and trying to be an evangelist or an influencer, as you said, trying to talk a little bit and convince people that I know a little bit about the stuff. And around those travels, what I noticed, especially when it started on fintech, was this thing that we got scared that we were told that if you don't change, you're gonna probably become legacy and you're gonna be outdated. And so we went into this craziness of revolution, or a fintech revolution, where we split the whole departments of the old banks into something tech. We added a tech into the department, and then you have fintech, regtech, something like everything tech. And we created a perfect storm, 12,000 fintechs, a whole amazing revolution with an amazing growth that we have seen today. With that amazing growth, we also had amazing security risks. We see it every day. Today was mentioned again. And going around, and we talked about it when we were preparing for today, one of the things that I noticed in conferences and around the industry is that there are three main things, three main risks that I would like to at least discuss and get the idea from the audience and from you.
So I think you've raised a really good point here, because we're talking about a lot open financial services, and as you touched on, we've heard a lot today about open banking, but no one is really so far focusing in on the challenges in this space. So I'd really like for you to share a little bit more on the three-pillared approach, so human, technological, and regulatory.
Sure. Let's start with the human, and please bear with me and with Stephanie, and do raise the hand if you feel like you want to say something or collaborate. The fintecher. We as fintechs, and you probably feel it as one, we search for the perfect fintecher, and a fintecher is what I call the best of 4 Bs. Somebody that knows about banking, somebody that knows about regulation, somebody that knows about technology coming from Facebook, and somebody that actually can become something I need tomorrow. Because under the fintech revolution and under this crazy ride, tomorrow you might have the PSD3, the PSD4, or something, and I need you to adapt. And we feel that we don't address that situation, and there's a risk that the person working for us does know a little bit about something, but might not be safe working with the banking. For example, just to make it quick, a developer messing with my optimization curve on ETFs, designing it, might know a lot about developing, but little about economy or finance, and might bring my fintech into trouble.
I think that's a really good point that you've raised there, because as a fintech, you do struggle to actually have the resources to hire all the people that you need. And it's a really critical thing when you're starting to manage people's wealth. I think the majority of 30 to 40-year-olds are actually managing people's finances now, and it's a scary thought to think that they don't have the expertise. Yeah. I'd like to actually take that to everyone that's here. Maybe by a show of hands, who here is a fintech? Okay. And how many of you have domain expertise in the fintech that you've started?
Okay. How many of you do feel that you can't get that developer or that help on the market that actually knows what you need? Is it easy for you to get resources for your fintech that actually understand fintech? Because I feel like developers, it's easy, but maybe a fintecher, the 4B, it's not that easy. Who here thinks it's easy? Just raise the hand. Okay, good. That validated. Shall we move?
Yeah, next.
Okay, let's go to the technology. Okay, these guys are actually having a nice ride with suits. Under technology, I think this is the biggest one. We can stay 15 minutes, or we can stay, 5 days talking about this. There's the APIs that we connect with each other, and I trust my API, but I make trust that your API is okay according to the documentation that you give me. And then we build a chain of APIs according to the whole ecosystems, and we hope that that goes for the best. We see the hypes, and we go after them. Also, APIs are supposed to work on the background, so if something goes wrong, I will probably not notice because they're not human-facing. The same with AI. We've been talking a lot about data and AI. Really, pardon for the analogy, I like to talk of AI like your favorite dog that you teach him to eat from the right hand or from the left hand, and you teach models to AI, and there might be somebody else teaching your AI some different models, so we also need to protect that. So the risk here is that we have so many technologies, so much money, and we keep on striving on top of the technology. We keep on going, or maybe it's just disguising a little bit that we know the risk, but we need to go, we need to continue. And that's the second risk. There's a huge risk there that if this breaks down, we might get into trouble.
It's a really good point. I think as well because the industry is really moving towards API connectivity, and I think it really needs to. There's so much more competition in this space, and it's all about speed to market. But I think the key question that you've raised is more around the security side, and do people really have the knowledge to be able to understand how to actually secure the integration between your app and somebody else's?
Absolutely. We have to remember that we keep on talking with fintechs and talking to on the market. We're a fintech. We bring the old world, the core banking systems into the new world, and people with malicious intents see that, oh, there's new guys messing with the money that used to be in the basement, and now they're actually messing with new technology open to the world. Okay, nice. Okay, shall we go to the last one?
Yeah,
okay.
next.
The last one, regulation. This is one of the, I'm Portuguese, so I see that a lot with big events in Portugal. We had the financial crisis, and we all suffer from it, and the fintech revolution was the result. And so governments and regulators were told, regulate the market. You need to keep this safe. But then the fintech revolution came along. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of fintechs. There's a lot of hubs. We see a lot of VC money there. And so countries and governments also said, well, regulate, but at the same time, I want the fintechs here. Make sure you create new ones. So regulate, but create new ones. And we have this kind of craziness where we say, keep the industry safe, keep the market alive, but at the same time, keep it updated to the risk approach. Doesn't matter the technology, doesn't matter what we invent. Make sure you have the both worlds. And it's a nice challenge. It's not easy. And what I feel is every time I see a startup or a scale-up or a company having the handshake of a prime minister and at a big event, it feels like they're also assuring that they're not going to get boarded for the next 2 months.
Very political.
Yeah.
But in terms of the regulation, there's I think another question that raises is really around the fintech agenda by the EU.
Yep.
So the aim of that initiative, of course, is to unify regulatory frameworks internationally. And as a result, we're really starting to see globally accessible fintechs like Revolut, N26 Bank. And the question I'd like to ask you is, do you think that then makes these three elements even more important to overcome as a fintech?
It's a great question, absolutely. It's a big challenge. You see that you have sandboxes, regulatory sandboxes all over the globe trying to talk with each other. You see a lot of companies trying to make that amazing platform that you just put an input and it explains to you how you would be regulated and jump from Europe to Asia, for example. And I think this risk it becomes even bigger. And again, I hope, I don't have the answers, I hope I had, but it's really interesting. Shall I go to the grand finale?
Yes.
Let's go to the grand finale.
Let's go to the grand finale.
Okay, so we have three big risks. People, processes, and technology. So human capital, regulatory, and technology. And what I feel when I'm talking and when I'm interacting with people or online influencing is that I have a big question. Are we falling into the same trap that we got out from the financial crisis? So we got out of a situation where information was not clear, the speed was unknown of what was happening, and all of a sudden, when we uncovered the whole thing, we got into trouble. These days, I find it hard to follow the speed. I find it hard to follow where all this technology goes. I find it hard to follow regulation, and I find it even harder. Although we do these events especially for that. I find it harder to keep up. Okay, this is the whole craziness, but what's the current status now? What should we do, and what happens? And are we falling into that trap?
I mean, it's a really good question. Does anybody here want to take a stab at answering that? Do you feel that we're falling into this trap?
How many of you actually think this is a trap? Oh, not really. Okay. You think we're safe? It's all good? It's going to be okay? Yeah. Do you feel that you know more now that you knew before the financial crisis? That you're, let's say, you're more informed. If you had to stop it, it would be easier? Correct?
So basically, I wanted to ask you after you're done with your presentation because you mentioned two keywords. You mentioned the financial crisis and the speed of data transformation. So BCBS 239 now is the new technology that GSIBs and DSIBs must implement because Basel Committee wants banks to do it indirectly. And I think there is hope. I think if we do a lot of research into BCBS 239, we can really be able to tackle the financial reasons that might end up for a crisis within an enterprise. And if we go further with our studies, I think this BCBS 239 can be applicable on a domestic and even global economical system, because at the end of the day, humans are humans reporting data all over the world. It's the same. We do all the same activities, just different trends, different brands, different timing of activities, and data stays always the same. So
perfect. Yeah, my point is, while we do that research, the world keeps going. Do we have time if something goes wrong today? That's the whole point. I see young companies sometimes having access to amazing amounts of wealth management, for example, with robo-advisory. And when I look at governments, I see piles and piles of folders coming from the big banks. But then the startups, of course, I would do the same. And on the risk approach, I say, let them start. But they're already connected to a huge amounts of wealth. So my thing is, do you actually feel that this is something you connect? It doesn't mean that it's going to break next week, but do you actually feel this, at least, risk?
But I think also on that point, you've raised a really good point about the access to all of this data, but then it's also the question of the people behind and controlling the data. You've got companies like, Facebook as an example, the tech companies moving into banking, and they have a tremendous amount of data, so much so that WeChat actually can monitor the streets and change traffic lights based on people using their app. Yeah. So it's great for the transparency, but then what about the risk of who's controlling this data?
I can finish with a nice example. I used to play Monopoly with bills. My nephew plays with some plastic card as a payment debit card. I'm like, okay, I didn't know the Monopoly moved into debit cards. I'm expecting my daughter to ask me to pay it with a phone, right? Because, well, it even changes at the actual daily life experience as a user. I'm a millennial, and when I talk to a developer, sometimes he's developing an app that I look at his code, I see how he thinks, and I tell him, I'm sorry, but that's not the way kids and millennials think these days. You're developing something that, although I can build a user story, how you build it, how you expect it to work, it's not how it works these days. And my message is, of course, let's continue, let's be great. It's an amazing industry, I love it. But as you said it, and well, we should take a little bit of a time somewhere, somehow in this event, at least to discuss more and more and more about it. From the APIs to the people, how we actually hire people. What is a fintech-er? What is a developer for fintech? What is a business user? What's a product owner? To actually how regulators should approach. I think it should be incredibly hard for a regulator to follow all this. It should be amazingly hard. On one side is trying to regulate, it's already hard, and on the other side you have a government knocking at the door saying, hey, I want the next fintech hub here. Build it here, I want the startups here. I'm from Portugal, there's a big, huge event that just finished in Portugal with 70,000 people, and I can imagine the pressure. It should be overwhelming because they want to build the next thing, just like today, right after this meeting.
I just want to add this comment. I'm doing a research on BCBS 239, trying to, in a way, I cannot use this word. I just want to say in my research, banks, are they complying with regulations because they are afraid from the regulator? If not, okay, why me as a bank or as a group of banks should comply with BCBS 239? Where's the business value for me?
True.
So the first thing is that after I really did a very a very deep research, not only on the technology behind BCBS 239, but also on journalism-wise, on analytics-wise, on experts commenting on the level of compliance, because there's, in BCBS 239, for example, there is no real measurement tools to see how bank is compliant or not, because each bank has its own core banking system. They all have their business data models that is super different from within the enterprise itself, from a subsidy to another. So I think it's very hard. I think we really need to do a lot of investments there, but for sure it's possible because we have a lot of data.
I hope so.
One thing. The second thing, why we are not sure and secure about it, we need to also take in consideration that there are so many people who are afraid of change. Like people sitting in accounting or finance. BCBS 239 is concretely changing the IT infrastructure for risk and finance reporting data systems. And these people don't want to change. And this also plays, I think, at least 50% of our results and speed and understanding what's going on.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, we're out of time, so thank you, Bruno, for sharing your insights. I think you've given us all a lot to think about and consider, particularly as everybody's talking about the positives of open financial services and making sure that we also take time to look at the challenges as well.
Thank you so much. Have a great event, everyone. Take care, event.
Thanks.